Cheers.
Cheers, buddy.
Salud.
Hey, nice meeting you, man.
You too, brother.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah,
And,
thanks for the invite.
no problem. And so I have probably like 50 questions for you, but where do you want to start? Where are you going to start on this journey?
We want to go happy. We want to go sad. We want to go puppy dogs and unicorns. We want to go dark. You tell me, man.
So all right. So I want to ask you about what you've been doing lately, because I think this will kind of set the stage for like all the stuff that we were just talking about of the journey, the entrepreneurship, having success, realizing you're dealing with a crock of shit that you got to like rip out of your business and all this stuff. Not calling your business shitty, but you know what I'm saying. Like
it's sweet.
It's
but
sweet.
it can be shitty.
Well, running a business sometimes feels really shitty. But like by that, I mean like you had a pretty big challenge that you were dealing with in your business. And it's like the mental toll that it can take on you is huge, especially now that I've been running a business for a year. It's that I got a ton of shit wrong and I didn't realize really what this was. But it's kind of like your baby in a way. And you've also got a fairly new baby, just like I do. So it's I don't know.
You get it.
Maybe let's start where you're at now, and then let's work our way back.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as of right now, being in the now, being present, that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
And I think I just shared with you, I got back from a retreat in Costa Rica, did a lot of introspective work. It's like wrapping up, we'll call it 20 years in 1 week, working with some plant medicine and shamans. And, you know, this was catered towards entrepreneurs and, you know, A-type personalities that are builders and are just in one strict lane of growth. And the reality is it catches up to you real quick. And you start neglecting the things that are the most important, you know, simple things. Suddenly you start like, love isn't the highest of frequency, right? It's growth. But that's the reality. Love is always the highest of frequency. So I just got back from this retreat and it was a really hard reset in a good way. I mean, this was not fun in any which way.
Like a real, like kind of wake up call, slap in the face kind of?
Slap in the face mixed with a bunch of purging, mixed with really getting the blueprint of how you should be navigating your life. At least that's my experience.
That's cool. And that's always been something that I'm like, that stuff makes me curious because it's like, it's ego dissolution, but it gives you a real like true north.
Oh, big time.
After these kind of things.
Yeah, it's not fun by any means. It's not like, oh, we're going to go and, no. This is like you're holding up a big mirror. You're looking at yourself deep in your bowels, in your guts. And you either want to look at it or you don't. And the reality is we live in a world, most people don't want to look at that. But if you
100%.
If you don't look at it, it's a matter of time till you'll implode. I mean, it's happened to me many, many times.
Do you feel like it's this stuff that like sits in your subconscious mind it's like right there and you don't want to look at it and you know it's there? It's like, I know there's monsters under this cover, but I'm not going to move this cover. And then you finally open it and you're like, wow, this is shitty to deal with, but like, I'm glad I did. Like, I'm glad I cleaned this stuff out.
Big time. You're clearing out your closet. You're clearing out your wounds. You're clearing out the things that you don't really want to deal with. And as an entrepreneur, let's just face it, we're all insecure. Mm-hmm. We know everything, right?
Yeah.
But do we?
Yeah. I know you know everything. And then also there's that flip side of like, oh, I don't know anything. Like, oh, I can't, maybe I'm not able to do this. And like, those almost come from the same place.
Yeah. You brought up subconscious, right?
Yeah.
What's chirping in our head all day, every day? We're not good enough. Can we really get this done? Are we being our true selves? Mm-hmm. How are we going to show up? You know, you have that little subconscious chop, you know, making you insecure. And if you don't really understand how to navigate that, guess what? You're just going to go in circles all day. I mean, I'd have done it for years until I really learned how to understand those feelings and those emotions. And it's okay to have that, right? Like that's also some fuel. It's good to have that ego, you know, but it can get in the way.
Did you know that this was going, like, did you know that was there? So leading up to this retreat and like finally figuring this stuff out, was it something like you've known that it's been there for a while, but you didn't quite know how to put your finger on it, or you knew it was there and you're like, I just don't have the capacity to deal with this at the moment. Like, where was your head at in terms of like that?
Well, I've done work with different modalities like this for, for several years. I've always had a curiosity. 5 years ago, you couldn't really talk about it. Now it's like, all right, people are like, oh, wow, like, how are you buzzing on this frequency? I want to drink the Kool-Aid that you're drinking. Because guess what? Like, freedom's amazing. Navigating your life from your heart, not necessarily your head. It's a beautiful thing. And when you can learn to navigate that way and start making business decisions and leading a team and growing and creating from a space of love and a space of heart, your decisions and the way things unfold and build out, it's a different path.
What's the benefit of leading that from the heart?
Well, I said that from the beginning, the highest frequency that we can all navigate from is love, right? It's very easy to forget to go into your heart, to think about what is right. Yeah. And there's different exercises that I can share with you just through breath work that you can tap into that and into your subconscious in a way where, you ask yourself questions. You ask yourself questions around business, or you want to dive deep into something that you're unsure of. The reality is we all have the answers. It's just looking at it from a place of, am I looking at it from the right place, or from the head space, or from the heart space? For sure. And if you're answering these questions from the heart space, you're always going to get it right. Well, because it's your highest self.
Well, and your head has so much room to add this like extra doubt. So the doubt piece is something that and we were just talking about this before, but it's like the doubt piece is one of the things that I've been really working on lately, like just the mindset around that. And I'm working with a guy that's like helping me like figure this stuff out, especially as it relates to business, but it bleeds into your regular life too. But you're talking about higher frequencies, and he's like, look, you got to look at the results that you're getting and now take it back to like the way that you think. You're operating here, but you want to be here, right? Like you want to be this and you have this path forward. Like if you want to be here, you have to think at the same level. So like rather than being like, oh man, I'm not sure if I'm going to sell this, or I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do this, or I'm not sure if this can, it's like, think of it from the space of like, all right, I've already got this in the bag. Like I'm already doing this. I already know how to do this. I've got it. Now it's a matter of making it happen. And by thinking from that perspective, it even like, it aligns my goals. So I focus on what the goal is rather than like focusing on the obstacle that I hit. And then you're like, oh shit, I gotta do this and this. And then you lose sight of it and you're like, this isn't worth it. But meanwhile, the goal is, but you're just stuck in the spot because you just like, you trap yourself. And that's right. That's what I realized I was doing. I've been doing that for fucking ever, dude. But it's been nice to finally like identify that.
Yeah, man, that's the law of attraction, right? If you're gonna attract negativity and you're gonna attract doubt, which is a low frequency, those are the results you're gonna get.
Yeah.
If you want to navigate and vision and manifest like the victory and can live in that space and it can see it and can feel it and emotionally feel it, you're going to get there. That path is going to get you there, right? Because that's a higher frequency.
Yeah, and the path kind of clears itself for you. Not that it's not easy and it's not like there's no obstacles suddenly, but like the solutions to those obstacles appear because like you can see them. You're not like here. You're like, your view is here now.
Right.
Does that make any sense?
100%. Okay. And I'll share with you some of the, this retreat that I went on that really came to me. Maybe it resonates, maybe it doesn't.
Sure.
I'm sure it will as an entrepreneur.
Okay.
And as a dad.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things in one of my ceremonies that came to me was my addiction to suffering.
Dude, what the fuck?
No shit. My addiction to suffering. I was going through this journey, through this ceremony, like chasing the next purge before I was being present. So that was something that came up. It's like, all right, well, I had to take a deeper dive into that, and I broke that down. All right, what exactly does that mean? And it will come back around to what you were saying. The last few years, it was just such a clusterfuck. I mean, like, who would have predicted a pandemic? What the fuck?
No.
Like I was sharing with you prior. building this business for 15 years, there was the ups and downs riding this growth stick, but also, the challenges in between. And, we were sharing with each other. I met my wife December of 2019. I was 40 years old. Prior to that, to put my life into perspective, my 40th birthday theme, I had a 40th birthday theme, Peter Pan theme. Okay. That was my life. I was living this Peter Pan lifestyle, but it was empty. I knew I wanted more. I knew on the surface, it was people, oh, you have this great life. You have this multi-million-dollar business. You've got all the toys. You've traveled the world. Check, 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 check. But the reality was I was sitting when I was alone and I had the time to sit. I wanted, I couldn't, I felt empty, and relationship wise, forget it. That wasn't happening. I was in the same routine over and over and over again.
Well, and you're constantly unavailable emotionally.
Oh, completely. And that was my story. That became my shtick. I'd go on these dates and, every other day.
It's not you, it's me.
It's not you, it's me. And I was honest. I was like, listen, I'm not emotionally there, but what you get is what you see. We're going to have a really good time. We'll eat good food. We'll travel. But that's about all you're going to get from me. And I did that long enough. I knew what the results were going to be.
Yeah.
So I know, like, circling this back around what you said before is another thing that came to me with that suffering is I was also living. So leading up to that, and I'll get into the journey of, suddenly met my wife. Everything is whole. Now I found my wife. I did the work throughout the year. I dated differently, like on this whole other frequency. I'm like, I got everything. And then of course, what happens? COVID, business goes sideways. I'm getting a sense of the reality that I wasn't looking at, for a few years. But so suddenly I was in the space of sink or swim mentality. I was living in the past, not necessarily the victim, but I felt like I was a victim because of, the challenges that I had to deal with my employees and my business at the time. And I was so worried about the future. Like, holy shit, suddenly like my business shifted in a way. I was like, what does this even mean? Am I gonna, is my business gonna go under? Is it gonna fail? Like I'm tied to the bank. Like what? I didn't have a sense of reality. So I was living in this constant state of
constantly in the past, constantly in the future, never
chasing
here.
Suffering. It was so hard for me to be present. And that was the most in these last 2 years, having, with my wife, getting pregnant, having a baby, those are the most precious times of your life. I don't want to say I missed it, but I'm playing catch up now, knowing that I wasn't present in a way that I should have been.
Well, it's like, it's hard for, I talked to like a decent amount of dads that don't really connect with their kids until they're 2. So like the fact that you've been able to like identify it and catch it at least this early on, that's at least actually, you might be ahead of like half of people even in that category. It might suck, but it's like, I think you're going to be okay, man.
Right. And let's face it, man, like we're entrepreneurs. We get the DNA from somewhere, it's like, it's our parents are awesome.
Are your parents entrepreneurs?
My father was an entrepreneur. Yeah.
Yep. Same.
So listen, it's a blessing, right? I had that opportunity at a young age to see what it takes to grow a company. I learned a lot of valuable lessons, at a young age, going just observing that most people wouldn't. But, knowing my father's journey and like, I just told my story. Well, my dad was building a business. That's why he was not there, or he is traveling. He's like, I get that.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily want that for my kid.
Sure.
And suddenly, and this is what kind of came to me as well, like this weird sense of reality in my journey, did I even want to be a businessman? I was told, maybe this makes sense to you. All right. So here's the formula of life. Go to school, work your ass off. You want to build a business, make as much money as possible, equals happiness. Right?
Either equals happiness or
nothing in between.
Equals what you should do.
What you should do. But the reality is, does that formulation actually align? I mean, if you've made money and check boxes, you realize it doesn't make you happy.
Yeah.
So to me, like aligning yourself and working on that constant discipline, that's happiness. That's joy. It's not about how many zeros you put at the end of your bank account.
Yeah.
It makes things convenient. Don't get me wrong, but that it for shit sure doesn't make you happy.
Well, and what I'm realizing too is like I started a business. I never really thought I would start a business. And so I've always thought of my dad as an entrepreneur. He's very much like my whole life loves business. He's started 3 businesses and sold them and done great things. And fortunately for me, like he was around when I was a little kid and like I've no real complaints.
Was he present?
Oh yeah.
That's great. That's very incredible. So he's a unicorn. You got a unicorn dad.
Yeah. Very present and also very present in his work.
Right.
But like also the Northeast, like if you get in trouble, anytime the shed was perfectly clean, that's how you knew the kid's really fucked up. Because that was our punishment. Anytime the garage or the shed is really looking nice, it's because like we messed up. But no complaints there, but he was always working. And I always told myself like, oh, I'm not that. Like I'm not a business person.
Right.
And now that I've gotten into this, I kind of throw the word entrepreneur around a decent amount, but I still don't really think of myself as an entrepreneur because I almost view this may be the wrong way to think, but I almost view entrepreneurs as people who just like making money that like they go through and they like it. And I almost view it like I am doing something else, but it's a business. And it hasn't served me well to think like that because I almost put these blocks in my own way of now I got to be perfect because this business is me. And like, if somebody doesn't buy, they're not buying me. And it's like, I think by one of the things I respect about like the entrepreneur, like, let me just make money. Like, let me just do this. Like, is there's that kind of detachment. And I'm learning to implement that slight detachment from there's a distinction between the business and between me because the failures, ultimately, I have to take responsibility for it and I have to make sure it improves and I have to make sure that money's coming in and I can take care of my family, all these things. But like, I don't know. It's this like wrapping of yourself with the business. And if it succeeds or doesn't, then it's like your personal identity is wrapped in that success or failure.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
It becomes an identity. And you just said something. We're attached to our greatest successes as well as our biggest failures.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to fail, it's a hard fail. It's a hard loss.
You can't succeed when you have this huge fear of failure that's like tied to you personally. And I'm just realizing like we're starting to make new content and things like that. And for a while I've been kind of caged a little bit because you get worried about, all right, well, if I really go for it, then like, well, what if somebody's like, oh, you're not an expert, or oh, you don't know this, or like, you look like an idiot, like this and this, and all these things come up. And then you kind of go like, well, rather than possibly facing the failure, let me like middle of the road it, which is just a slow path to failure.
It's safe.
But it's not even safe. It's actually dangerous because it's just this. It's just a slow road into the ground, but it seems safer.
But if you don't try, you don't get. And you don't know. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to like, all right, well, I'm learning something through this content and maybe it didn't resonate. Okay, you can maneuver real fast and go the other direction.
You're already flexing that muscle.
Right. Instead of like going down that rabbit hole of like, should I do this? Fuck that, man. Like get ahead of that. It's kind of like you got to get out of your head.
Yeah.
And all the time and not worry about, that's, I guess, one thing that I've never really worried about what's going to happen until recently. I was like, all right, well, worst case scenario, I'd just start over again.
Yeah.
And, you got to put yourself out there. That's a superpower. For sure.
Definitely
and that's
is.
part of being an entrepreneur. If you don't ask, you don't get. If you don't try, nothing happens.
Well, and that's when you're talking about, that's why I was asking about like thinking from the heart or like operating from the heart through your head. It's you start from a place of more openness and then you can be willing to try versus like starting here. Like, don't try that, dude. If you fail, that's not good.
Doubt.
Like, it's all
insecurities, judgment.
Yep.
It's a low frequency. Guess what? If you live in that space and you start, should I create that piece of content? Well, what if it comes off that way or that? You're gonna be in that frequency, and it's gonna be hard for you to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
Heart space. Well, joy, love, light. I can influence this person here, and maybe it will resonate this person because of this type of content that I'm putting out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? Best case scenario is great. It's gonna be a hit. Worst case scenario, you just pivot and try something else, and you're creating tons of content every day. It's gonna get lost over time. So
it's gonna get lost in the mix anyway.
Yeah,
and
it's like, again, getting out of your head and into your heart.
Yeah, and it's it makes the longer arc of time easier, right? So like operating from that kind of space, you can take a longer view, 30, 90 days out, and know, hey, these are the things I want to get done in that time,
right.
Rather than, it's good to be present. So you have these goals and things that are a little bit longer arc. You can be like, all right, I don't have to get this done today, but it gives you the ability to be present and work towards those on the shorter term without introducing the worry on the shorter term. So you can I know I'm moving towards that. I'm going to hit roadblocks.
Sure.
Like Tuesday, it was like, I didn't even want to get out of fucking bed, but I just showed up. I did the stuff I needed to do. And it was like, Wednesday was like pretty good. And I've done it in the past where you don't do the stuff you need to on Tuesday because you don't really feel that good. You're back in the worry on Wednesday. And you're just like,
it's changing the narrative.
Yeah.
It's changing your own narrative. And it's looking at the opportunities of trying something out as a possibility, right? And worst case scenario, it's not about failure, right? Like it's changing that language. It's changing that narrative. It's not failure. It's actually growth. So you try something, you're going to learn something, and there's growth there. So there's always growth and loss. It's all how you look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I guess since we're talking about that, what was the impetus for starting to do this work on yourself and get your mind right and do this reset?
Yeah. Well, I touched on that. I had a very heavy, beautiful, confusing, complicated, emotional, dark, light few years. I think it's important to kind of paint the picture of the initial journey. I started a company, Pyure. We were the first organic sweetener company on the market. First organic stevia. We're the number one organic stevia in the market. We're in, thousands of retailers across the U.S., Walmart, just to name a few, from Amazon to, tons of retailers. And we also supply a lot of food and beverage manufacturers. We got a whole lineup of different products. I bootstrapped the business from zero. Being young and naive, of course, I thought I'd be able to go up against massive billion-dollar chemical companies. Why not? Why wouldn't I want to go against that?
Yeah.
But that's the journey, man. That's fun. To me, that excites me. It's like the idea that you can create something from nothing, and being always, living the active, healthy lifestyle. As a yogi, I was a snowboarder. I drank Red Bull. That's kind of how this whole thing happened. But I didn't like the sugar that was in it. So I taught myself how to formulate. I was trying to make it natural and sugar-free. And I stumbled across stevia, over 15 years ago, and it wasn't approved by the FDA. So that was kind of like my aha moment. And going back into that time frame, that was, it was exciting. It was like, holy shit, I can create change. I can help people, and I can create a business out of this. So it's doing good while doing good.
Yeah.
It was that simple. And, from upstate New York, from Rochester, moved down to Naples in 2008 during a recession. Ironically, we're full circle.
Yeah.
Just about. And I didn't overthink it. I didn't have a business plan. I was just like, this is the right thing to do. And, just went for it, started formulating out of my kitchen, traveled the world, learned the ins and outs of harvesting and extracting stevia. At the time, stevia literally tasted like shit. So I was like, all right, I just got to get this right. I got to make it taste like sugar and figure out the regulatory behind it and figure out an extraction method to make it taste like sugar. And that was kind of like the IP and the technology. And, we had a lot of wins along the way, got the packaging, but granted, there was a lot of, I don't want to call it losses, it was growth. I started in Colombia, South America, spent, a few months over there, got the supply chain set up. But but realizing culturally, it's a different mindset of when you need something, I need something yesterday, in that culture, it's like, all right, well, you'll have it tomorrow, but really it's like in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So it's just, learning different cultures and doing business, that's a big lesson in itself. Going through all the checks with packaging, I remember I got my first order, somehow convinced a pretty decent retailer that we had our shit together. And of course we had product, right? So I was like, holy shit, they gave us real money. Now we actually have to build this, right?
Yeah.
Got everything set. We were way off the timeline, finally able to deliver it, only to realize we couldn't open the packets because they used the wrong material. But it's those lessons in life, right, that you need to go through.
Yep.
And like I said before, it's like, listen, if you're not trying, you're not getting.
Yeah.
You got to try, and you got to give room for. When I launch any products now, it's like, all right, I go with the mindset, like if I hit it 75%, I'm way ahead of the game. So that small variable of, I don't want to even call it loss, just we'll call it trial.
Yeah.
You don't get upset at yourself. You're like, all right, great. Next time it's going to be better. We're going to figure this out. So anyways, we had a lot of success relatively fast. I started the company in 2008 and, I traveled the world, learned the ins and outs of doing, soup to nuts of a sweetener. That wasn't exactly my background. I'm not I don't have a chemistry background. Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, well, what's your background? Are you a formulator? I'm like, no, you just figure it out.
Yeah.
Roll up your sleeves, figure it out. So, got the call from Whole Foods. To get a national rollout in Whole Foods is nearly impossible. Met with the key buyer. He tried it. He's like, I don't like stevia. I've tried it. It's bitter. I said, I totally get it. We're organic. Next level. He tried it. He's like, all right, how do I get we'll give you, will you give us an exclusivity? I'm like, will you give us a national rollout? So next thing you know, we're in business, and then started getting distribution, and Walmart called us. I remember in that meeting being young and completely cocky and arrogant. And I said to the buyer, I'm like, I don't think it fits. I don't think that works out. And I had such an amazing buyer. He was thrown off because this is the Walmart buyer, the #1 retailer in the world.
And they are check these 4,000 boxes before.
Right. And he says to me, he's like, because I was like, do you really think organic, this was probably close to 10 years ago already. Organic wasn't a thing. And then organic in Walmart wasn't anything at that point, mainstream. So he said to me, I really believe in this. Your product, it keeps coming back to me that you have such a superior product in taste. If you can figure out a way to get this at a price point that can cover the mass and be affordable to the mass, I'll support you. And it's been an amazing journey ever since. But yeah, as any business, shit happens. We started getting phone calls from food and beverage manufacturers saying, hey, we've tried this Truvia, we tried this product from Cargill, all these chemical, like, why does yours taste so much better? What's your secret sauce? Suddenly we have an industrial business. We're supplying hundreds of food, beverage, nutraceutical, cosmetic companies. And like, great story. Self-funded. I started the company with $150,000. Really stretched it, and we were profitable. We were profitable at a relatively short amount of time, and we just rode that. I didn't spend unless we had it.
Yeah.
And the bigger you get, you start realizing the more complicated it gets. And, I don't have partners, so I have no one to really rely on or to trust or to double check. I'm a creative, right? I realize my blind spots are, operational, financial. That's just not what I love doing. So, and it takes, you don't know that on early on. You think you can do everything, right?
No, not me.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, man, I cranked this out for 10 years straight.
And you were working, like you said, like 20-hour days and stuff.
I didn't sleep. You wake up in the middle of the night sweating with ideas. You're like, you just go when it's like you said, you got a baby, not like your real baby yet, but your idea baby. It doesn't stop.
No.
And coming from an entrepreneurial, family, it's like, that's not like a thing. You're given the tools of, all right, well, on paper, this is how you start a business, right? But you're not given the tools of, well, how do I deal with stress? How do I deal with anxiety? Like, are those things that come up? especially coming from the Northeast with that type of mindset. It's a sink or swim mentality. No one's talking about emotions. Forget it. It's not like a thing.
You ever seen those Instagram videos for like, it's like the old Boston guy, and he's like, it's called Be a Man.
Yeah.
You ever seen those?
Yeah.
Don't have any hobbies, just rinse off your driveway. Be a man.
Be a man. Same thing. And yeah, I had that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember it was, 10 years after that. We had all this great success, great press, like really an amazing story. And I'm sitting in meetings and sitting across one of my employees, and all of a sudden my lip starts swelling, like just pops out. My eye starts swelling. This becomes a pattern. And I'm like, holy shit, am I dying? Heart palpitations. I'm like, be a man. Be a man. Suck it up. Bury it.
Yeah.
It's just allergies.
Yeah.
Get blood tests. Basically the doctor said, if you don't get ahead of this, you're going to have a heart attack by the time you're 40.
And how old were you?
Shit, I was mid-30s at the time. So,
clock's ticking.
Yeah. So I'm, someone who took care of myself. I worked out every day, but I didn't deal with the mental health because I wasn't equipped. I didn't have any tools in my tool shed to say, all right, this is how you deal with anxiety. This is how you deal with stress. I didn't have anyone that I could go to. I had mentors, but my same mentality is these old school mentors that were brilliant. I can't bring up and be like, I'm stressing out. That's not going to happen in that conversation.
Well, and it's so you're having these ideas, the stress again coming from probably your subconscious, and it's like it affects you in physical ways. But since you're not aware of it, you're also not really putting two and two together.
That's right.
This is affecting you physically.
That's right. Physically. Yeah. And then emotions, forget it. I'm just a statue at this point that you got to compartmentalize everything, right? Emotions down there. So like we were talking about before in relationships, you just put it in a little plastic thing, just shove it down, and you think you're doing that, but you don't know any better. You weren't taught any other way. You think you're on this like path and you have all these successes, but at the end of the day, you're by yourself, you're feeling empty.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be in a relationship. Everybody thinks you have everything, but you're by yourself. You're like, is this it? All right, bought your next car, bought this, traveled, you're checking these boxes, and you're like, this is it? This is all that's cracked up. I'm going through all the stress and I feel like this inside. Is this worth it? So at that point of my journey, I realized I had to make some changes. I built an incredible team. We talked about FGCU. When I started the business, I went to Dr. Kawanui and I said to her, I'm like, this is the idea. I can't afford help. You got any interns? And we started this intern program. So I was able to mold, this really cool culture. And as you grow, obviously you have different needs and you need different operational functions and different management. And, so I brought in more of some different types of folks to help me manage the business because I knew I had to take some time off. I was controlling every facet of the business. So gave up some control, brought in different people, and I was tired. I was exhausted. It stopped being fun. I'm like, why am I doing this? This is great. I mean, the money was obviously great. Obviously it was solid.
But then for what?
For what? So I really went back in this holistic approach of like, how do I become whole? I started doing that, that self journey of what am I missing? Why can't I asking questions? Why can't I be in a relationship? Why do I feel this way? I was coining it entrepreneurial depression. I'm like, I shouldn't be depressed. I have everything. But it was there and it didn't go away. So I had to do a lot of introspective work to find, that wholeness, that feeling. And that was kind of, I would say around 2017, 2018, I started working with different modalities and, plant medicine to really understand what that looked like and the why. And a lot of it, quite frankly, is, it's in our DNA. We're given our cards from our parents. It is what it is. And they're given their trauma from their parents. And what I've realized is you can break that cycle or you can keep carrying it. You don't know any better, right? Your parents, I love my parents. They did their best.
Yep.
That's all. And that's all you can really do is do your best.
Well, and this stuff wasn't talked about even
right
I feel like 15 years ago, maybe people started talking about that, but
not even, man.
maybe not
This is
even.
like finally surfacing. Look at all these successful CEOs and people that are offing themselves. I mean, they've got everything on paper, right?
Yeah.
But clearly there's something there. And this is where this other kind of second cycle of where my path is heading is really getting ahead. And this was right before the pandemic. I started talking about this. I started talking about this in classes, and I was teaching at FGCU actually, speaking, I should say. It's something that resonated. And the more I talked about it, people were like, how are you having those feelings?
Mm-hmm.
And when it came from someone who quote unquote had that success story, it was a different narrative.
Yeah.
And, that's as this journey is still going on and progressing, even back then, it was like, all right, I've got something here. And I was mentoring people. I was like, how do you have, what do you do on your day to day to keep yourself on the straight and keeping yourself in alignment? And I knew, I was like, yeah, I work out, I do breath work, I meditate, I do these types of workouts, nutrition. I was doing that regardless, but I didn't have any granularity around each specific thing. So as I'm evolving, as I'm growing, as I'm starting to understand, like being in service for me is what fills my cup. And I believe these types of conversations around depression, around anxiety, around stress, especially in this environment where everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. If you're not equipped with those tools, it's just a matter of time you're going to crash and burn, especially with the social graph that we have out there with people are just seeing victories. That's not real, man. It's smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. And it's you get put in this weird spot too when you do promote this stuff on social media, because it's like how much victory versus how much quote failure do you put out there? So it's like, how much do you teach people that of the real aspect, and then how much do you not put out there for the sake of like protecting your business and things like that? Like I think a lot of it's driven by that. Now there's some stuff that's like, I want to be flashy and I want to do it.
Well, let's just to that comment.
Yeah.
So what I hear from you when you say that, fear.
Oh, for
fear
sure.
is a low frequency.
For
right?
sure.
If you're living in the past and you're living in the future, you're just creating fear. And that's something that came to me over the last 2 years. I was living in a constant state of fear. You don't have, that's not real. That's not being present.
So what were you like, if I can ask, you're comfortable sharing, like what were you afraid of?
Failing.
Oh, okay.
Failing. These are stories that I was creating because I was living in this there was so much change at once, right? Like, and a lot of these things at that point. So, just kind of fast forward December 2019. So 2019, I was really working on what love meant for me and why I couldn't love in that way. And, what came to me in one of my retreats and journey was I didn't know how to love myself because I was never loved in a way that I should have been loved. Right. So I did that work and I understand that. And then I started navigating relationships very differently. And I put out to the universe, I'm like, all right, like I'm making these changes. I'm going to source my partner this year, some way or somehow. And it was a crazy journey. That's a whole other podcast, how I met my wife. But it was magical. It was perfect. I met her in Costa Rica. I was down there buying land because what I realized, quick story here is, talking about like checking boxes. I was building this house in Naples because that's what you're supposed to do when you're a successful dude, the 6-bedroom glass house on the water, right? Totally going to serve me. No. What came to me in journey, I'm like, if I build this, I won't find my partner. And came back. I was in Costa Rica, came back, canceled it, and what came to me is like, I have to, if I want to have a second home or even my primary, it has to be in a place that I heal. And at that point in my time, I was traveling all over the world. I was doing incredible things. And I always found myself in Costa Rica going back. My assistant would be like, it'd be an absolute nightmare. Like doing all this. She's like, here's the deal. Slow down. I booked your yoga retreat and you're leaving your computer and you're leaving your phone. Go get straight.
You're pissing me off.
Right.
Go to Costa Rica.
And this was like 3 times a year. So I was like, why wouldn't I want to live in a place where I feel whole, where I am grounded, where my creative juices flow, So that was an interesting lesson. So to follow that back around, 2019, I was looking at this land and the guy, back and forth for about a year, finally calls me up. He's like, all right, let's get this deal done. Booked my ticket that day, went down there, found a yoga retreat, and met my wife.
Hell
And
yeah.
that's how it works, right? Right? When you least expect it.
Definitely.
So,
but it's also because you got to set that up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you got
to put it out in the universe.
Yeah, you got to set it up. You got to change the way you're operating, and then it opens up the door for that. Because if you didn't, you could have literally been talking to her and nothing.
For sure.
Nothing.
And if I was operating from a space of fear and doubt and questioning myself, saying I'm never going to find anything, words are powerful.
Yeah.
If you say those things, guess what? You can manifest that.
Yeah.
So you got to be super careful on the narrative and the language that you use in yourself, in your head.
So why did you fear failure?
Because I didn't understand the language at the time. Again, going back to that conversation, what we're taught, make as much money, build a business, make as much money, or whatever it is. This plus this equals happiness.
And so as soon as that could be possibly impacted, it's like,
right.
Fair. Oh,
right.
Shit.
And I came back after I met my wife in 2019. Guess what? 2020, pandemic. Holy shit. What does this mean? I'm back in one place. I'm peeling back layers of my company at the time. And suddenly I'm looking at some of my invoices. I'm like, there's a multi-million-dollar marketing campaign without my approval on this. What the fuck is going on here? There's no KPIs. This is insane. How is this? And I got to give out 2 bonuses a year. Like, what is going on? Started peeling back layers of the company, and let's just say it wasn't necessarily run with the utmost integrity. And these are people that were with me for 10 plus years. They were family. I put them before I put myself. That was another valuable lesson, especially building a business. So it was more that space of feeling betrayed. I had to rip, I fired one guy and then the rest fell in place and next person quit. And these were people that I loved. They were family. So it was hard. And then suddenly I'm like, I feel like I'm on this wobbly stool and I got to solve for business and I'm doing all these things. Like, it was scary times. On top of, met my wife, she's pregnant, I'm gonna have a baby. It was like, I'm dealing with issues of a tariff. I'm dealing with a pandemic, supply chain issues. Like, if everything can crash at once, it happened. But, sometimes you got to pull up your big boy pants and just, you muscle through it. But in that space, I don't think anyone's really equipped for that, but you're living in this past and you're living in this future.
Do you feel
it's
like
all fear-based?
So do you feel like, all right, you were working on this stuff and then you finally met your wife and you're like, oh shit, all right, here we are. Like you kind of like broke into the next plane almost. Right. And then it's like, this comes. And then did that put you back?
Big time.
Okay, but you already had kind of the taste of getting out of it. So once you got back in, sure, for probably a full month, it's like fucking pandemonium. No pun intended. But like you had already been here, so you knew the possibilities that, hey, even though I'm here, once like I can breathe, oh, that's still there.
Yeah. Thank God I was equipped with some tools, right? Because I knew, all right, this is temporary, but it's very easy to go back in that cycle of questioning yourself and failure, especially when you have all of this change at once. Mm-hmm. It was hard. Like, I still don't know how I got through it, but I did. I pushed through it. I rebuilt my team. I have this incredible business now with awesome people that don't feel entitled, and they're just grateful. They're grateful to have this opportunity and rebuild an incredible business that's doing amazing things and helping businesses and food companies and, diabetics and health conscious consumers that want better for you products. Like, it feels so, it's like I feel alive. Yeah. Granted, like, listen, we're not having the hockey stick, effect that we used to, because we had to recalibrate. I mean, people are selling products at a loss just because, they had to get their bonuses. It's all about growth. So these are all lessons.
Okay.
And, I could choose to be a victim I could choose to say, but guess what? When you're an entrepreneur and it's all on yourself, it's on you.
Yeah.
I got to look in the mirror and say, this is on me. It wasn't their fault. I let this happen.
Well, and because you didn't look at it, you weren't willing to peel that back.
Right. And I had to take that time off what if I didn't? Maybe I wouldn't have met my wife at the time, or, my son wouldn't have been born.
Yeah.
So, you can look at that as like a beautiful gift. And as well as my opportunity to grow, my story, my narrative was, I'm going to sell my business for blah, 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 blah by the time I'm 42.
Yeah.
What?
It's like,
as I got married and had a kid, I'm like, these are gifts that I love. I love building business. I love the creative aspect of it. What am I going to do? Retire at 40 something? Come on.
And then do what?
Die by 50. Right. Like it's fun. So you got to bring the fun out in it, and you got to realize like, what are your superpowers? Where do you want to be focused in that, in that process? And that's kind of where the alignment comes in. I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place.
But that's perfect because, dude, you just said something like the fun of it. And this is something that you mentioned something earlier. I can't remember specifically, but this is something that I'm realizing is, for some reason, I've told myself that I shouldn't be able to have fun running a business. Like, I should be like, almost like I don't deserve to enjoy work, right? Because there are so many people out there that like hate their job, and I've been in jobs that I hated before, and it's so fucking stupid, dude.
Right.
It's like as I step back, I'm like, why would I do this? And it's literally in the past week and a half, 2 weeks, that I've realized like, oh, part of my issue was I was trying to make myself more miserable to fit an idea of what I thought that
chasing suffering, brother.
And that's what it was. That's what you said. It was chasing suffering. And I was like, why don't I let that shit go? And what if I came in and I just like tried to enjoy this stuff? And what things can I do to like facilitate that? So like, I play music. That's what got me into podcast production, is I was learning music production. Somebody asked me if I could produce it. And so that's how I got into this. And then I've created like separate stuff. Like, this is a personal podcast, but I've created other separate things, other accounts. So it's more like business and things. So I was like, what would be the most like vulnerable thing I can do? Not for the sake of vulnerability, but like literally for the sake of like, stop taking yourself so fucking seriously and chill out. Like, all right, I'm going to play songs on Instagram Live, and I'm going to play a song on LinkedIn Live. And these are live recordings. So whatever I put there, I could always delete it, but I'm not going to. So if I like mess up the song, it's there. If I mess up the song here, it's there. And these are going out to like my professional network.
Right.
That's like, it was just one of those things of like, what can I do that I'll enjoy and that is going to like challenge me to get out of this? Like, I have to be serious, and like people need to take me seriously. It's like, yes, they do, because of the work that you do. The work you do has to be, people need to be able to take you seriously. But like, for me to be like worried that if somebody's like, oh, that guy plays guitar, I'm not going to work. Like, right. Like, oh, it's that little, and it's stupid. And I'm just realizing like, why don't I come in and like enjoy it? I found out just by virtue of sheer luck, I think, playing guitar the other day, that Ty knows music theory like in depth, and I don't understand music theory. Like I don't understand it, but I make all these songs and I don't even know the chords I play. They're complex. And he's like, oh, dude, well, if you just did like an F major and you did a diminished ninth on there, then that would actually be a nice transition to this. I was like, what did you just say?
What?
And so I've got this piano that I've had at my house for a year, just collecting dust.
Yeah.
And I finally brought it in, and yesterday we started jamming stuff.
Amazing.
And like, it was cool. And now we're like putting that to the test, and that'll probably work its way into some of the stuff we make. And like, now I'm feeling lighter on camera, and it's
that's your meditation.
Yeah.
That's your zone.
Because I like creating.
That's your alignment.
Yeah.
And how do you incorporate that into your daily, into your work, where it becomes, it all aligns, and you can be in flow.
And I can enjoy it.
And you could enjoy it. And you're not listening to the doubt and the insecurities and the subconscious that's creating unnecessary doubt for no reason.
But have you ever heard of the book, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield?
Yep.
Yeah. So like I've just gone back and re-listened to it, but that force of resistance, like I'm thankful I found that book at probably like 20. I listened to it for the first time. So that put things in perspective, but it takes that voice from here and it gives it it's like an external pressure. So that kind of gave me the leeway to realize like, oh, it's not necessarily me that's like sending those things. It's me that determines how I respond to those. I have full control over that, but those will never stop coming because like the negative thoughts are like a force of nature.
Yep.
It was that helped put things in perspective too. I forget the lesson all the time, but
we're human.
Yeah,
it's easy.
I've hit this, and then you go back into this. But just like you had, like I've been here, so I know it's there.
Right.
So it's like, all right, there's hope.
Right. It's a discipline. It's a daily practice.
Yeah.
Like if music gets you in alignment, guess what? That needs to be part of your daily routine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have to work out every day. Yoga is important to me. When I get out of bed, it's breath work and meditation, and that sets my tone. Like for me, the discipline is how do I shut my mind off for 20, because I'm, constantly creating. I'm seeing
like
angles,
your mind's always going?
Yeah.
I've never experienced this.
Yeah, exactly. As the entrepreneur, it's a blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah.
It's wrangling that. It's wrangling the mind and aligning it to the heart. But it's beautiful, man. The fact that here, it's funny. Like I saw your body language when you started talking about music.
Yeah.
Like you lit up. Like that's your juice.
Yeah.
That's
fun,
your sauce.
Man. It's fun. And in a way, I'm thankful that it's not right now. It's not my like vehicle for producing income. And I'm actually thankful for it. But what I like about this stuff is that this is adjacent to it. So it gives me a solid like vehicle to do my own stuff and a solid vehicle to make money and generate money.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's cool. I'm not relying on the thing that I really enjoy to be the money maker.
Sure.
But it doesn't have to be separate. Like I'm not freaking doing some like manual labor thing to where it's like if I brought a guitar to like a construction site, people are like, you're fired.
Right.
It's like I have this ability here.
So
that's cool.
You can weave this in for sure.
Yeah. Well, so all right. So you mentioned that you want like you now like the service is really a big part. One of the realizations that you had with this work. So like how have you so far been able to work with people and help them? And then and then I want to get into like, what are your plans with that? Where does that go?
Yeah, that's a good question. So after this recent retreat I went on, I was sharing with you the suffering, living in the past, living in the future, navigating from a headspace of fear, being present. So, what are the positives, obviously, that I got out of this is like accepting. Sometimes you just have to accept where you are. At least for me, I had to accept like, all right, this is where I'm at. I can keep staying in that loophole, in that rabbit hole, or I can figure out and start looking at it from a different perspective. So accepting was important. Being present, that was super important. Realizing like, I'm just creating my own fear. I don't have to. You said it. We have the choice to navigate what direction we want to go into. So it's really working through that. And I choose not to suffer. Why? Like, life is good. And that's where a gratitude practice comes in for me.
Okay, how so?
With my meditation, I'll take a few minutes just to really think about the most important things that I'm grateful for. And I work on a gratitude practice every day. And I come from a place, a heart space, what brings me joy? Where do I go in that space? And it's really interesting that you can shift your energy by using your mind.
Yeah.
Like you talking about music. If you're having you're down a rabbit hole, or you're having the space of doubt, I'd like take 20 deep breaths. While you're taking those breaths, go to a space where you've been, whether it's travel, whether it's, playing music, whatever it may be, and really embrace that environment and go in there. And it's incredible. And that's one thing, I took on a coach, who's a performance coach. He's trains professional athletes, actors, actresses, CEOs, executives. We just connected in a major way, and his modalities, how he goes about these training sessions, just resonated with me when I was on that retreat. And I'm like, that's how I can be of service. So,
okay.
It's like I'm back in school again, which for me is like fear-based because I was never a student.
Well, and it feels weird to have it feels like you're getting criticism, but you're getting help.
Right.
But it hits you in the ego and you're like,
but I'm
right.
And
it's like, I know that you think that that's really important to do, but would you try this? And you're like, finally, I've ran my freaking head into the wall so many times that you're like, all right, I'll say it. I feel stupid, but like, I'll do it the way that you're saying. Like,
right.
And it's, of
but
course.
You have to surrender. You talked about that. You have to surrender.
Yes.
And that was one thing I said, listen, egos to the side. I am your student. You are my mentor. I want to be a sponge. I'm going back in this mode. Like whatever you say, I'm going to do. So you got to be vulnerable.
Yep.
Right? You got to be completely open. If you're not, your ego is just going to be in that way of navigating your learning process. So I'm actually learning how to learn all over again. But it's amazing. And I see this opportunity. And what really hit me last Friday, I was given the opportunity to speak at FGCU to the Entrepreneurship School.
Cool.
And I used to do it all the time and I loved it. And I got like, there's a sense of high that I get like going in there and I'm not one that walks in with a PowerPoint and has a plan. That's not how I navigate sales pitch, anything. I just go in, part of, one of my superpowers, just being able to feel the energy and go with the flow and navigate, from an organic space. And I went completely vulnerable in that class. And I told him my journey. I was like, oh, we're all entrepreneurs, right? We're all making tons of money. Like, all right. And I took them through that journey of the success. And I said, listen, this is what happens. You can play the victim or you can see growth. You can see opportunity. And you got to be equipped and you got to have the tools to navigate that space when you're in a low. And, that's where I see the service, because I wish I had those tools when I was building a business of how do I navigate anxiety? How do I navigate stress? How do I navigate depression? What do I do on a daily to keep myself aligned? So, with a handful of, I'm working with, some people that we all have different kind of superpowers and we're coming together, and this is something that hits home for all of them. So I spoke about this in class and told my journey and talked about, got to 2019 and 2020, met the wife, and then this is what I had to deal with in my business. Yeah. And I wasn't equipped. And this is how I felt. And this is what I went through, hardcore entrepreneurial depression. I had suicidal thoughts. I wasn't going to kill myself, but like there was days I was sitting in my office hiding, looking up and being like,
what's the point?
Why am I like, what is the point of all this? So it hit home. It hit home to these students. And suddenly they opened up to me. Every one of them. I was there for close to 3 hours. And they were, being completely vulnerable, talking about their shit. They're like, and then the question was like, well, can you give me the tools? How can do you have a mentorship? And it was my light bulb moment. Another one of my light bulb moments. Like, this is how I need to be of service.
You get the initial idea, it sits in wait, and then another light turns on.
Right. So I want to create a program, a curriculum that I think could help students, that can help executives, that can help leaders, basically anybody we're all suffering. It's our choice to how we want to suffer.
Yeah.
And, it's still at its infancy, but
I think artists too.
Yeah. Artists for sure. We're emotional, creatives. A lot of entrepreneurs, we're creatives. We're emotional, but it's hard to like in that mindset to actually show your vulnerability. It's hard to lead from that space.
Yeah. Well, and also as you're building a business too, because I'm in the business building phase, and it's the vulnerability and the emotional turmoil that comes with doing something like this. Actually, early on in the business, it's not that it doesn't serve you, but showing those cards doesn't serve you, because sometimes a lot of people are looking for stability when they go to work with you. And so sometimes if you like, I think maybe what kind of drives people into this shutdown mode is because when you go into sales, like if you go in and you're like, man, I'm just like fucking up today. They're going to be like,
Right.
well, I'm going to pay you how much?
Mhm.
Like what? So like you kind of get into this zone of like, oh, I have to put on that front. And it's like a small distinction that I'm starting to see, because you think that you're hiding it, but really you're just kind of hiding it from yourself, and they don't know what's going on, but they feel it, and they're like, they get weirded out. So you lose the sale anyway, and neither of you know why you lost it.
Correct.
So like I'm now realizing like, okay, let me step back. And if I'm in that space, like, all right, 2 minutes before that call, it's just like, shake it out. Let me compartmentalize that in the way of like, that's not who I am. This is just like a moment here. Let me talk to you and be present here. And then once we're done, I'm going to fucking fall apart after the phone call if I need to. But like, okay, now I got to come back and like deal with this. But it's, I don't know. That was I guess I'm literally just reaffirming what you're saying, but that's one of the weird ways it tricks you. It makes you think that you're doing the right thing, but you're just like, it's like sitting right here under your nose, and you think like, oh, well, I've buried it, right? And it's like, oh, it's written on your face, dude. You just literally can't.
So if you're given the protocol and the tools to help you navigate situations like that, for you to shift your energy, it's invaluable.
It's huge. That's what I've been doing the past 2 months. And
you can create the best business plan in the world, but having these tools, it's invaluable for any business you build or whatever situation that you're in.
Because nothing goes according to plan. You're always going to hit the obstacle.
Listen, I had a really shitty phone call before I got here. I sat in the parking lot. I did 20 deep breaths, put myself in a space of joy, went into my heart. I was like, shook it off. I was like, boom, let's do this. You know? And
yeah, because it has not, I did not know that. I didn't pick that up at all.
Right. But these are modalities. These are different things that I'm learning that for myself that I know can help others. And I want to be able to share that really with the world.
Well, and you show up, you do show up present. Like this conversation, just like it, like I said, I wouldn't have known that you had like a bad call right before this. And it's like, you didn't bring that. You didn't even bring that in the door.
Right.
Like it wasn't like, oh, well, I'm feeling good now that we're talking, but it felt weird before not like you didn't even bring that in the door.
Yeah. Cause it was out of sight, out of mind. I shifted that space, that headspace into, that was gone. That was a story that I was creating. It wasn't real. It wasn't reality. This is reality, being present, being able to have an amazing conversation with you, hear your story, hear my story. Like, at the end of the day, it's alignment. And, how can you navigate your space? How can you navigate your life from a space of love, from light? And, it works itself out. It really does. And that's, business wise, if you can roll it that way, not from a space of greed, not from a space of fear, which a lot of people, you said the word like not surrender, but you're pushing up against things that are not meant to be. Sometimes you got to take a step back, observe it, listen, go forward.
Yeah. That and actually it's funny because like the Jocko Willink stuff where he talks about the detachment. One of the times where he said that was like, he's like in a line with guys, they're all there, no commanding officer, and he like really just took a step back and like looked around and it was like, let me make the call. And like I've noticed that when you create that space, I tell people this and they're like, you're out of your fucking mind. But like, I literally will sometimes have days where it feels like my vision is here. And then when I do that reset, I feel like I went from like a square frame that you're in to like a wide angle lens. And now it's like, oh, like I was blocking like 40% of the field of vision. There's a solution right there. And it's like 5 feet away from me. And I was trying to like look straight ahead at like 200 feet. Like, oh, I don't see anything. It's like sitting right here.
Well, look, is there possibility here or is there possibility here?
That's exactly it. And it's like, it happens physically for me sometimes.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
It's
running to the toilet. You're like, what the hell? It's not the coffee.
Yeah.
I didn't have my coffee yet.
Well, dude, so, I mean, as we're kind of wrapping this up, dude, this has been freaking sweet. And this is I think, perfect timing for
Yeah.
even me to have this
Yeah,
conversation.
man.
But
And I'm, offline, I'm a source for you.
Sweet.
Like, cause I'm going through this, I'm learning these exercises, and I want to be able to help you, man. I want to be able to help everybody.
oh
Because
yeah,
it's there. We all have it in us. It's a matter of like, here are some basic tools that you can use. Let's start here. It's not like, oh, here's this crazy curriculum. All right, now, no, you got to keep it simple. You got to, especially for we're all ADD, we're all in a million different places. Like, if you have a handful of tools out there that that you could shift yourself at any time of the day, and it's free.
yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to use that?
That's exactly it. So all right, so how do people reach out to you, connect with you, and then also like how do they approach you to work with you on this stuff as you're building it, and like what does that look like right now?
Mm-hmm. It's in process. I mean, it's work in process. It's funny. I got a call from an email from Dr. Kawanui. She's like, heard you had a really great class. Sorry, I missed you. Told her a little bit of. She's like, where have you been? I'm on the board there. I'm like, I told her straight up. I'm like, it's been a really tough few years. She's like, let's have lunch. So
Cool.
I want to propose this idea of creating a curriculum around this topic. It's I don't want to say I think it's a necessity. It is a necessity. Mental health is a challenge. How can people reach me? I should know my handles, but this is a whole new world for me.
Well, just send it to me after. I'll put it in the show notes, like right up at the top, so people can find it. But
and same thing. This is, I would love feedback from your viewers. If this is something that resonates, is this something that they see that is a challenge for them? If they were to given some sort of tools, what would that look like?
Yeah.
This is literally in real time. I'm creating this. It's happened I'm 6 days in. And it's funny how pieces are starting to fall together. And that's trusting the universe. Like if I was to go back in that state, I can't create this. No, fuck that.
Yeah.
I'm going to create this. It's trading language. I don't even want to say try. I'm going to try to do this. No, I'm doing it. I'm in the now. Speak from a space of presence.
It's not a matter of if, it's a when.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's happening. I know it's going to happen. We're going to create an app that's going to be accessible to everybody. I want to tie it probably first. My vision right now is how do I tie this into FGCU to be a tool to be accessible for students. What does that look like? What kind of systems are in place in order to help people? It's going to be built. Do I know what that looks like right now? No, but you know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, you'd be
it's
lying if you said
no, man.
Yeah.
I'm calling in the right people. People are falling right in front of me to build this thing. So it's going to happen. And what I'm excited about is the idea, especially with younger entrepreneurs going, building businesses, like they've got a shot at doing this without having the mental health issues that I had and a lot of other entrepreneurs and builders and leaders. And this world will be a much better place. And 95% of the time, for example, when you're meeting people and you're like, this guy's a real asshole, it's their own shit that they're coming into the party with. Like if I came in with that mindset of this is what I dealt with, you'd be like, this guy's a real asshole.
Yeah.
So if you have these tools and like, listen, shake it off, this world will be a happier place where people can lead from love and from heart and alignment.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that it will never fully get there. And I think people give up on things because of that. Like the world's never going to be perfect, but if you like the way certain things are, that's because people put the time in to do stuff. And it gets you out of this kind of like nihilistic viewpoint of like, well, what the hell is the point? It's like, there's always going to be shitty people out there. There's always going to be people dealing with mental health things. The world has been here long before you were here, and it's going to be here long after. But if you can do that while you're here, it makes an impact for people, and they can make an impact in the future. And it just continues. And I think I lose sight of that.
We're all just doing our best.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're all just doing our best. We're showing up, but if you could do it with alignment and love and heart, it makes it fun. I'm psyched to hear you play music, and I'm psyched to have you weave your music into your podcast. Yeah. Like there's no doubt about it, man. You're crushing it and you're going to keep crushing it.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate it. Well, thank you for coming, man.
Yeah, man.
This was
Thanks
awesome.
for the invite.
Thanks.
Same.